Since the early 1920s, aircraft from the Provincial Air Service have become a familiar sight over the skies of Ontario and beyond. After leasing aircraft from the private sector for several years, the Ontario government formed the Provincial Air Service, which was officially born on April 1, 1924 at Sault Ste. Marie. Their first aircraft, the 13 slow and lumbering Curtiss H-boats, left over from World War I, had a limited role, but like the crews that flew and maintained them, their functions rapidly broadened. From use as a mapping platform, the H-boat would develop into a forest fire patrol and detection aircraft, a passenger and cargo transport, a medevac machine. It had many uses, none that it was designed for and none that it did particularly well. Following the H-boat and other hulled machines like the Vickers Vedette and the Loaning Air Yacht, the de Havilland Gypsy Moth introduced the air service to float planes. The Moth would prove to be the first of a long association with de Havilland. The year was 1927. The first recorded bush flight had taken place only 8 years previous. A new era was in infancy. The Provincial Air Service would play a major role. The year 1930 saw a significant new addition to the fleet, the Hamilton H-47. This all-metal high-winged monoplane offered comfort, speed, and rugged reliability. The enclosed cockpit, a first for the OPAS pilots, meant heat. In adapting to and utilizing different aircraft types, the service flew machines like the Buell CA-6 Air Sedan and the Stinson SR-9 Reliant. 4 of the Buell biplanes were built in the waterfront hangar at Sault Ste. Marie, but once converted to floats, they were never a well-liked airplane and were dubbed the Bulls by the pilots who had to fly them. The gull-wing Stinson SR-9, on the other hand, was well-liked and adapted well to bush service. Even the richly appointed interior of the machine that had been purchased from Carroll Lombard and Clark Gable, after hauling dirty hose packs and fire pumps and firefighters with hobnail boots, wasn't pretty for long. Varied aircraft types came and went over the years, but perhaps none left a bigger mark up to this point than the Nordine Norseman. This wide-bodied float plane, built in Montreal, was the first aircraft to be completely designed and built in Canada, and by many is considered to be the first real bush plane. Canadian bush operators and the Royal Canadian Air Force took readily to the new aircraft. The Norseman would be the first Canadian aircraft to be widely exported, and major customers would be the military, including the U.S. Army Air Force. Unwittingly, the success of the aircraft would pave the way for another aircraft that would gain a reputation worldwide, the de Havilland DHC-2 Beaver. The Beaver, which would be recognized 4 decades later as an international engineering marvel, was the culmination of the input of a lot of people in the quest for the ideal bush plane. And one of the prime movers behind the search was the Ontario government, who would become the first customer for the Beaver, purchasing 25. From the Beaver design and reputation came its larger successor, the DHC-3 Otter. This workhorse and the smaller Beaver would form almost the entire fleet of more than 50 air service machines in the 1950s. These utility machines were ideal for any number of uses, including transportation and supply of fire crews, aerial photography, surveillance and enforcement, passenger transport and servicing fire towers, which included parachute drops of equipment and supplies. The one role for which they proved ideally suited was waterbombing of forest fires. Although waterbombing tests had been initiated in Ontario as early as 1944, they were suspended, and it wasn't until the early 1950s that they resumed. From waterproof paper bags to float-mounted roll tanks would come the integral float system, complete with intake probes and hydraulic bomb doors. Following the proven success against an actual forest fire in 1957, all of the beavers and otters in the fleet were equipped with roll tanks. This would lead to a larger single-belly tank slung beneath the beaver and eventually the otter before integral floats were developed. Tank capacity was limited. The roll tanks for the beaver could handle 45 gallons each, 80 gallons for the otter and 210 gallons for the otter belly tank. With better bombing systems would come better aircraft. The legendary beaver would evolve into the Mark III turbo beaver in 1965, and the otter would be replaced by the twin otter, still in use and providing utility service. In 1981, the first Canadair CL-215s were introduced to the Air Service. These two were the forerunners of a fleet of 9 that would greatly assist forest fire management. The only aircraft in the world specifically designed for a single purpose, fighting forest fires, the CL-215 can scoop up 5,400 liters of water in 10 seconds. It can carry its 1,200 imperial gallon load to a fire at 130 knots and dump the 12,000 pounds of water from treetop level. And when required, the onboard injection system turns a load of water into fire-retardant foam. By the summer of '98, the 215s were being replaced by the modern turbine engine CL-415s. With all the firefighting attributes of the piston engine machines and more, including greater speed and performance, larger bomb loads, all hydraulic controls, less maintenance, and increased reliability, they were welcomed by both pilots and air engineers. There are more than 40 such Canadair piston and turbine-powered tankers across Canada and now in the United States as well. The Canadian machines form the national waterbombing fleet, available to assist when needed across the country in times of emergency. Waterbombing is not limited to fixed-wing aircraft. In the early 1960s, before helicopters had really come of age for the Air Service, tests were initiated using the Bell 47s as potential water bombers. Loads were restricted, but the concept was very workable. Today, of course, the Bambi bucket and other systems are common sights on fires all over North America. And still related to fire, the helicopter's most important function is in initial attack. Combined with a CL-415 holding a fire, a fully equipped helicopter initial attack crew can be on a fire in minutes, knocking it down while it is still small and manageable. We owe much of our fire management success to that very combination. In today's fire management system, the helicopter is invaluable. Crews and equipment can be quickly deployed adjacent to a fire or water source, and the remote fire line camps can be serviced daily. Helicopters allow fire managers to survey the fire and plan their strategy. They carry forward-looking infrared to map fire boundaries through smoke. And the helicopter allows fire managers to implement an important element of the attack, the backburn. With an M&R-developed incendiary machine known as the aerial ignition device, fuel-laden ping-pong balls are dropped to the earth, where they burst into flames, igniting fuels to be burned off. A drip torch slung beneath the machine allows for the quick and safe ignition of prescribed burns, an important silvicultural tool. Ontario's fleet of helicopters is playing a greater role in initial attack, as well as in all other resource management operations needing rotary wing support. Flying year-round, the rotary wing of the Air Service is being used to accomplish numerous objectives. In the far north, they are used to live-trap caribou for scientific study by wildlife biologists, after which the unharmed animals are released safely back into the wild. And ministry biologists find the helicopter ideal for their studies of polar bears in Ontario's Polar Bear Provincial Park. Even the twin otter plays a role, servicing the scientists' camps on the frozen tundra. From the northern tundra, Ontario's taxicab yellow twin otters became a common sight over South Texas in the mid-90s. In the winter of 1995, 2 M&R aircraft demonstrated their effectiveness in dropping 830,000 coyote rabies baits in that state's fight against a rabies epidemic. The following January, 3 specially equipped twins were flown to Texas to continue the fight, dropping 2.5 million vaccine-laden baits in less than a month over an area of almost 40,000 square miles. Returning every January for 5 more years, M&R's twin otters dropped more than 15 million rabies baits in South and West Texas between 1995 and 2001. In excess of 40 million more vaccine baits have been dropped in the fight against rabies in Ontario, Quebec, Ohio, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, and Florida since the innovative approach was started in Ontario in 1989. In the embryonic days of the 1920s, air crews often had to be self-reliant and innovative. Air engineers, some of whom would later become licensed pilots, not only kept the aircraft flying, they played a key role in advancing technology that would make the aircraft more adaptable to the demands of the northern bush. M&R's Aviation Services section has a mandate to provide or arrange for non-scheduled air transport for all departments of the Ontario government. With a staff of more than 130 managers, pilots, engineers, technicians, and support personnel, the Air Service is responsible for an air fleet valued at more than $250 million. It consists of Canadair CL-415 water bombers, de Havilland Twin Otters and Turbo Beavers, Bell Long Ranger and Eurocopter helicopters, a specially equipped Navajo, and Beech King Air aircraft. Annual aircraft utilization exceeds 10,000 hours. Today, the Ontario M&R's Aviation Services can look back on 80 years in resource management flying, aircraft operations, commercial contract management, and a lot of innovation. It is a recognized world leader in resource management aviation and the aerial suppression of wildfires. The oldest, continuous flying, non-scheduled government air service in the world. Well done, and congratulations, Ontario. You've earned your wings.